Hey there. So, my next guest is an announcer who is crushing it in the esports world. He's hosting shows, he's doing the shoutcasting. He is, treating it like a real business and making sure that he is staying not just on top of what's going on right now, but keeping his eye on the future. So, this is one I know you guys are going to love. Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the Gamerpreneur podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Bradford Carlton. Today, we have a very special guest for you. We have Alex Rodriguez, aka Axeltoss. How's it going, Alex?
It's going good. Obviously, it's an interesting time in the world, but I'm hoping everyone is nice and safe and healthy. We're close to the weekend here, so I'm doing okay. Not too much to complain about, all things considered.
Fantastic. I love the attitude. You know how few people actually have like a positive attitude like that?
I understand it. I get it. I mean, I always try to stay just super positive. I mean, part of it's my internet demeanor, I guess. When you're a show host, that's your job. Your job is to kind of be positive, and a lot of people look to you to brighten their day. So I don't know, man. I guess I'm thank my upbringing, I suppose.
All right. All right. So, Alex, I'd like to get this show started getting just right into it. So, why don't you begin by just telling us a little bit about yourself, please?
Yeah, so I'm 30 years old. I'm a millennial. Grew up in a really cool time in video games and technology and the internet and shows and TV, movies, so on and so forth, books. And I launched into the video game space when I was in college. I played video games since I was a kid, dealt with dial-up internet for a while. Everyone, a lot of people know how that goes. Kind of competitive growing up, really into sports, and now, long story short, I'm a guy who is a broadcaster for multiple video games. I do commentary. I've done hosting across all different competitive video game titles. We call it esports. So that's pretty much it. I do have a college degree, which is kind of rare for some people who do what I do. So I had to kind of balance education and also the career pursuit of getting into competitive video games. But I love competitive video games. I love strategy games. I love very difficult games. And as a commentator, I'm kind of that's kind of where I am, just working on as many titles as possible, engaging myself with these very interesting titles and games, and of course, managing my own personal channels and working when I can. Obviously, there's a little bit less travel going on, but in the space that we are now, a lot of like kind of what we're doing here, remote projects are possible. So kind of been still, hitting the grindstone when I can. Mostly doing things from home, doing things online, and I'm thrilled to be involved with the competitive video game industry. It's really fun to see its growth, to have seen its growth over the past many years, and I'm excited to see where it goes in the future. So just trying to position myself properly and help other people in the space as much as I can, while also continuing to pursue the on-air gigs for commentary and hosting.
Fantastic. I love it. All right. You kind of just gave me a whole lot there to cover. But before we do that, what I'm going to do is I ask a single question to start every interview. So I'm going to ask you just like I ask everybody else. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being high, how weird are you, Alex?
How weird am I? Ooh, dude, I like that question. I'm probably a 7.5.
And why would you say that?
I would say a lot of people classify weird in different ways, and if I were to explain my job to the average person, most people would probably say it's weird. As far as, look, I make most of my money in my career and my living talking about video games, talking to people who enjoy watching competitive video games. That as a concept in and of itself is something that a lot of people have trouble grasping, where it's like, wait a second, there's people who are competing in these video games, but there's also people who are watching these people competing at these video games. It's kind of weird. So
Do you
I'm
think that's
kind
just
of
because it's still fairly new? I mean,
absolutely,
think back when the automobile came out. Somebody decided,
yeah.
I'm going to race this thing. Well, someone had to like announce what was happening, right?
Totally. It needs to be normalized, and it will over time, but it's not there yet. So it is on the weird scale. Also, I am kind of a zany guy. You know, I don't think I fit any particular mold. I'm not like, let's do the same thing every day, which might be weird. I kind of pride myself in being a little goofy, a little funny, and you know, kind of just I have a really adventurous spirit. So you know, you're not going to get the same thing out of me each day, right? Which might be a little weird too. And that's a fun question. I'm thinking about it. But yeah, I think 7.5. I think that's right where I am.
Right on. I love it. It's a fantastic answer.
Just
It's not the
weird
lowest
enough.
I've had. It's not the highest I've
It's
had.
like just weird enough to make life exciting, you know?
There you go. All right. So Alex, this is the gamerpreneur. So I do need your gaming cred before we like really get too much into this. So when did you first start playing video games?
Cool. So let's see. The earliest memory I have is probably a game on the floppy disk, Darkwing Duck, I think it was called. You know, you talk about Math Blaster, maybe those educational games. You know, when I was very young, into my, you know, 8, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 years old. My parents have always been embracive of fun and games, and games are very much a part of my family's overall, I guess, default activities. Obviously, further back in the day, board games, card games, so on and so forth. So I would say I played games on the floppy disk. I played some of those browser-based games that came out in the early stages of the internet. SOCOM from the PlayStation 2 was probably my first online competitive experience, where I was the little kid on the mic talking trash with the really high voice. Halo, the early Halo games, all over that. Early Call of Duty games. There's a game called Kart Rider, which I've been talking way too much about recently because the game is being remastered and it's one of my favorite games. That initially launched in North America in 2006, 2007. You know, it's 12, 13, 14 years ago. That was one of my first online gaming experiences when I was in high school. And then from there, StarCraft, obviously StarCraft came out in the early 2000s. I was very early into StarCraft, and StarCraft 2 was probably my first catapult into the professional side of things, actually working on games. And that's pretty good coverage there.
All
Yeah,
right.
those are pretty much all the early titles.
All right. I love it. You and I might have actually, there was a chance that you and I played on StarCraft against each other back in the day.
Sweet,
You
maybe.
never
Hey,
know.
you know, first of all, that was a pioneering space, and it was
Oh,
so
heck
cool.
yeah.
And those who knew, where it's like they had these lobbies, and I was less in the competitive game. Obviously, StarCraft is hugely competitive in the 1v1, super serious, very strategic. It's insane and it's awesome. But I was very much into like the use map settings games, like the kind of the silly defense games. I was all over that. So if you played any of those, we very well might have run into each other.
StarCraft, Warcraft 3, Frozen Throne. Yeah.
Nice, dude.
All right.
You got my respect already, man.
Love it. Thank you. What do you play today?
So today I play everything I can get my hands on. A part of it is what I enjoy and what I find fun, and always, you know, I have an adventurous spirit, as I said, always looking for things to entertain myself as far as games are concerned. But also from a career standpoint and a professional standpoint, I always have an eye on, okay, what games are getting bigger, what developers are making what game in what spaces, what genres do I think are gonna grow, how can I align myself as a commentator and an on-camera host to be a part of these games before they get big. And that's a whole nother story. So in that sense, Rocket League has kind of been the main game for me most recently. Very, very kid friendly. It's still it has a lot of potential for growth. Free to play. Epic Games just bought Psyonix not too long ago. Obviously, Epic Games' position in the space is pretty mighty. So Rocket League, ton of fun. Very skill based. Very high skill ceiling. Meaning it's easy to get into, but it's very hard to master. And it's very fun for me to improve in games. So I'm looking for games that are very skill based that I can try to get better at. StarCraft, I'm not as much in, and that's more. I mean, I still love the game, but I just it's hard to play It's hard to play that game. It's intimidating.
You mean you can't move and do 300 RPM?
Exactly, dude. StarCraft players are serious, man. I love the game. I love watching it, but I haven't been playing as much of it. Waiting for StarCraft 3. I'll probably play more StarCraft. The game Cartwriter I just mentioned, they actually launched a mobile title, so it's free to play on your phone. And phone games are pretty interesting. It's a pretty interesting space in the industry. And Cartwriter, they're coming out with a remastered version quite soon, so have my eyes on that big time. What else? The auto battlers are very interesting. I've been dabbling with a few of the auto battlers, kind of card game based, like Hearthstone is another one. Auto battlers is like Teamfight Tactics, Dota's Underlords, Epic Games' auto chess. So that's a kind of a rising genre that I've been dabbling with. What else? That covers most of it, but I definitely my main focus is probably 20% fun for myself, 80% my job. But that doesn't mean that 80% can't be fun, which is the very strategic games that I believe have potential in the esports space. I think that's very important to have a finger on the pulse of. What games are on the rise. We're still in the early stages of esports, as you said a little earlier. It's still all getting normalized and less weird. So I'm very much hyper focused on the competitive games that have a good access of entry, that have a good demographic that they engage with, that have good potential for growth, and that have a very high skill ceiling, so that there can actually be a esports scene that can be nurtured. I mean, my goal is to be the host, to be the host, the guy introing the show, the guy on TV, the guy in the stadiums who's telling everyone what's going on. So I'm very much focused on those games that I believe will have a vibrant audience and will have, circuits around the world in the future.
Fantastic. Oh man, I can't wait to get to the what you actually do. I got one more video game kind of related question, then we'll talk about the announcing part. So you're just a couple years younger than I am. And so you've pretty much gotten the same gamut of games I have. If you had to choose one though, as your all-time favorite, which one is it?
All-time favorite game. You see, friends and people who know me are going to laugh at me because, I mean, I talk about the game all the time, but there's no reason that I can't say it again. Is there another game that I would prefer? Cartwriter is my number one. Sorry. It's an arcade racing game. I grew up doing track and cross country, and the idea of games against the clock are very intriguing to me. You have competitive titles that you're against a person and you beat the person, and that's it. But there is a rise now of flight-based video games, meaning you're competing in a flight. It's not just you against another person like StarCraft. You're competing against 7 other people at a time, and there's a particular thrill to that. And there are more games that are coming out with that, and Cartwriter does fit that mold, and it's a game that's been out in Korea since 2004. It's very vibrant in South Korea and the Asian game market. It hits all the buttons that I really enjoy. So it's a lot of people give me a hard time for just talking about the game way too much. So that's why I'm like hesitating a little and saying that answer and really trying to think of anything else. But I'm sorry. I just always default back to that game.
Oh, there's no reason to apologize. Everybody's different. I mean, I can't say I've had too many people give the same answer on this. I've had over 150 guests. So like everybody's got their thing.
Yeah, dude. Cartwriter number 1, StarCraft probably a very close number 2, and then Rocket League would be number 3.
I love it. Okay, now Alex, let's get over to the preneur part because I love what you do. You do announcing, you do shoutcasting, you are that voice for gaming. What does the job entail? What is this position? Because like you said, it's still kind of new, at least in the video game space.
Yeah, and I can give a little bit more about my background with this answer because the way to do it and the way to get into it is not that hard. I mean, it's very similar to what you're doing here, where my entry was when I was in college and I was in track and cross country. I didn't go out too much on weekends, and instead I built a computer for myself, and this was around the time where you could actually do that. Internet was decent, so I wired a hardwire internet, got that figured out at where I was staying in college, and then I just started streaming, right? Just started making content on my computer at home. and in video games. So you can capture the game that you're interested in and you start working on it. So to answer your question there, basically, I'm the guy that's talking about the games. I'm the guy that is making the experience entertaining for the audience. And getting into that, I was a partner with Justin TV in 2011, and that's kind of when I really started, where you can have a game that you're discussing on your stream, and then you can hit a button and you play an advertisement, and then you get money. Super novel concept, but super cool. And obviously now that's a huge deal, and it's the core part of a career for a lot of people. So, um, yeah, like my kind of at the end of the day, what I do is I'm the guy who, give me the microphone and I'm going to make it entertaining. Either being the host of a show, which is probably my bread and butter, if I had to pick. Right? There's a number of different roles within a production for an esports presentation.
What kind of show do you mean?
So, competitive video game competitions, esports, which is tournament-based play, where at the end of the day, the question is who is the best at this game, and that question has to be answered. Especially in the time of the internet with a global involvement, that question becomes even more fun as time goes along because more and more people are being connected through these games, through the internet around the world. So, um, so there needs to be tournaments with these games. There's just like the Queen's Gambit, a show that just came out on Netflix, right? These tournaments that are coming up that are providing opportunity for people to just make money at the end of the day. Years ago, not huge prize pools, but now, I mean, you have this show for a reason. You look left, you look right. There's money absolutely everywhere. So it's just tournaments for a ton of money to find out who is the best at these games. My job is to kind of present this to the audience and to kind of explain that to them. Hey everyone, I'm Axeltoss. Welcome to the Rocket League Championship Series, World Championships. We are live from Las Vegas. We have $1 million on the line, 10 of the best teams in the world, and over the next few days, we're going to find out who is going to be your world champion. So, I mean, that's kind of what it is at the end of the day. Telling that story of these players who are in attendance, who are competing for these ridiculous prize pools, explaining why they're so good at what they do, and to the point of a commentator actually in the game, that's where it gets much more specific, where you are analyzing everything these players are doing in real time as they're doing it. But as I said, the bread and butter of what I do, what I want to do, where I feel like I position myself well in the space. I'm a communication major, journalism minor. I really work on speaking. I want to speak English well. There's a lot of people watching who don't even know English, who are actually learning English from you as you're speaking, because it's a global audience. You're speaking. You have no idea who you're speaking towards, and that's really fun to me. So yeah, so I'm the guy on camera. Hopefully I look good with a suit and tie generally. I'm kind of the face that people see when they're trying to either figure out what's going on or if they're an avid fan who is used to it and just wants to be entertained.
Okay, I love it. Like I can just tell that you have a passion for this. Where did this passion come from? Like you said, you kind of knew in college that this was where you were going to be heading, but where did it first start? Where was that fire kindled?
Kind of the entrepreneur side of it. Always wanting to be a part of something that is new and rising. I think a lot of people look for that. It's an easy answer to maybe go and just get a job that's there. But I've always kind of tried to find something new, something different, something disruptive. And growing up and going through high school, going into college, a big sports fan, the dream job is sports commentator, right? That's kind of the dream. It's like, okay, you get to talk about sports and you get paid. Like Jim Nantz, right? He's got one of the best jobs in the world, you talk about show hosts like Alex Trebek, rest in peace, or other roles like that. Who was The Price is Right? Bob.
Barker.
You're right, Bob Barker. You see that, and you're like, wow, this guy's having so much fun talking about a game show. How cool is that? So kind of the plan for me as I was going through high school before video games and esports were really a thing. The plan was, okay, let's try to be a sports commentator. I like sports. I can talk pretty well. I have pretty good vocabulary. I'm pursuing journalism. I like words. I like questions. I like interviewing. Let's try to be a broadcaster. Let's try to be a commentator for sports. Let's try to be a show host for games or something like that. Let's try to be a radio DJ. So throughout that, I decided, okay, I'm going to go to Texas A&M University, which I did. I'm going to pursue a communication major with some telecom in there and a journalism minor, kind of fitting the bill of, in the direction of something entertainment, something on camera speaking, maybe a news anchor. I don't know. But then at that time, that's very luckily, I suppose, that's when video games started rising. That's when the competitive video game infrastructure started developing. So that was when internet technology also started getting a lot better. That's when streaming technology started to be a thing. Justin TV was founded. There's a lot of early streaming platforms trying to get all the piece of the pie. So it just so happened that my ambitions for being a sports commentator aligned with the video game side of things. And again, as I said, I was just able to build a computer. Again, another technological kind of thing that had to be able to happen for me to do what I do. Built a computer, got connected with decent internet, and then just turned my camera on and said, "Hello, world," and just started trying to talk about these games. And I guess I was fortunate and also, strategic in trying to align myself with games that I saw a lot of potential with. And then I just tried to work really hard on these games from my home, and then kind of just started doing the commentary and going from there.
Fantastic. And how has the entrepreneurial journey been for you along the way? I'll admit, you're possibly not the number one shoutcaster in the world. Otherwise, you would have charged me to be on my show.
It's a good question. I would say it's so much fun, first of all, and there's so much opportunity for kids out there, and you're seeing what's happening with a lot of people who are just succeeding wildly. That should be promising for anyone who's trying to do it. And for me, I have from the beginning more aligned myself with helping companies succeed and helping projects succeed rather than focusing too much on my personal stuff, which is interesting. Where what I mean is, like, I have been much more inclined to go work for, like, one of my first gigs was working for Major League Gaming. I moved to New York City to work full time for them and work on all their shows. So I've kind of been the guy from an entrepreneurial standpoint, less about my own stuff and my own brand, although I do have some stuff going on. But as you said, I'm not necessarily the most popular out there, but more about aligning myself with some projects that are getting big and helping them succeed. And I feel like I have done a really good job with that in the projects that I have decided to pursue. And it's stuff that wasn't necessarily directly helping my channels and all that, but more me using my talent to help their channels and help them grow and succeed and get bought out and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, there's just so much opportunity there, like setting up your own stream, setting up your own YouTube. You just talk about the channels of income that you could possibly get: YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, LinkedIn. You can get into merchandising. You can make your own team. You can pick up any sponsor you want, really. If you have a cool enough project, you can get sponsors involved. You have games that start at nothing and grow astronomically, like Rocket League is a great example of that. And that's a lot of fun. So it's just, there's so many options there. And between me and you also, you're on it too, you're figuring it out. I'm still figuring it out. We're still kind of in the early stages. We still don't know which games are going to really be successful, which developers are going to do it right. Because one of the cruxes of the space is the growing pains and the learning experiences. There have been a lot of games that have failed. There have been a lot of initiatives that have failed. Everyone's trying to figure that out. So for now, it's still a lot of fun. I'm not, esports talent aren't being paid as well as network talent, right? You look at all the commentators for the Masters golf tournament or the Olympics or NFL games, right? These guys are making millions and millions of dollars. We're not there yet in esports. That's part of the goal here for me, is like help pushing that.
Like, I talk with a lot of people in esports, and I hear money's just being dumped into it every single day. Investors are coming in, but no one's really making money in the space. So why is it that you're not getting kind of that recognition?
It's a really good question, man. I guess one of the easy answers to that question would be just where esports is in the context of media in the world right now. I'm so confident that we're still growing, and it will get to those. It will make strides, and it will succeed, and there will be money everywhere for everyone. I firmly believe that. But the fact of the matter is, it's weird, as we discussed earlier. It's new. A lot of people aren't accustomed to it. It's still very new. So you look at sports, traditional sports, these are 100-year endeavors. We are still only in the first 5-10 years of legitimate esports activity, media, sponsors, so on and so forth. But we're getting pockets of attention. Some network television programs are dabbling into projects within the space. Bigger and bigger sponsors are getting interested. Games are continuing to grow around the world, and the income we're seeing from games is actually insane. So what has to happen is it needs to be accepted at a certain level around the world, which it will eventually. The technology needs to be there for it to succeed globally, which requires better internet infrastructure. The reason it became so, I mean, you look at South Korea. Anyone who's a history buff or who's interested in really checking out esports, they're going to go to the Asian market. They're going to look at South Korea. Why is it so successful in South Korea? Why does South Korea have a government body that is in esports, or KESPA, right? Why do they have their biggest telecom companies and their biggest banks interested as sponsors and funding teams and having ridiculous pro houses? And why have they been doing this for 10 years already? Well, the answer is at the end of the day, South Korea has a very small landmass. Internet infrastructure is very easy to develop within a smaller landmass. South Korea, they were super onto that from the start. And again, it's super fun to look into and to read about, but they were able to set up this internet infrastructure very quickly. They have smaller pockets of landmass, so they can aggregate people very easily. PC cafes have been a thing for a very long time in South Korea, and they still are a thing because everyone's a little bit closer together. It makes a lot of business sense to throw up some infrastructure, get some people together. You already have hyper internet because the landmass is so small, so they've got the good internet for a very long time now. So these are kind of the elements you look for in the global growth. So that's kind of what it is at the end of the day. Just being accepted globally, technology has to be there globally, media has to kind of wake up and see that it's a thing and then approach it properly. Because a lot of what we're seeing in network television, so on and so forth, these are built by older generations who wouldn't necessarily have too much of a clue when it comes to what's happening in the video game space. So what needs to happen is all these massive entities, and it's starting to happen. You look at Intel, you look at Tencent. These are some massive companies that are getting into it. So it just has to that transition has to happen naturally to where the money will come into the space. Now you look at the international also from Dota and the money that they've been able to come up with for their tournaments where they have a crowd-funded prize pool. You buy an item in the game. Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. $20 million prize pool for one tournament over one weekend, and then some. I think it's at like 30 million now. So there are pockets of like, holy crap, this is some staggering money. But from an on-air talent standpoint, honestly, it's not there yet. And for me, as someone who has been near the top of the space, I'll actually ask higher than anyone else, and I'll get turned down on a lot of jobs. But I have to ask higher, because if I'm not asking higher, no one's going to get paid more. So that's kind of what we're at right now, especially with me. And it is hard. So us commentators and us on-air talent, we need to be asking higher so that that money can actually be there. And then also, naturally, these massive sponsorships, these massive media deals will eventually fit itself into the space. And that's where the really big pool of money is, to be able to really have a nice lifestyle and actually make a career out of the thing.
Okay. Let me ask, as far as announcing goes, do you think it's going to trend more toward the traditional sports model where announcers are more kind of siloed to their sport? You don't see a lot of crossover between football announcers and tennis announcers, right? Are we going to see that in esports? Every year a new game's coming out, old games fall off. Like, is there going to be that same model, or you think it's going to be different?
Yes, we are seeing commentators and talent stick to a game and be rewarded. And a lot of that's the relationship with the developer. If you can have a nice relationship with the developer, there's no reason not to stick with that game. If the developer's treating you nice, you're getting the money you want to be paid, and you see long-term career growth and a career path. That is very legitimate, very viable, and we do see people pursue that. League of Legends is a really good example where League of Legends is big enough where you do have dedicated talent where they can be like, you know what? I can make decent money here, right? Games, big company, Tencent with the backing. It's good potential, good money, good future growth. We have dedicated commentators in League of Legends who are making a really good amount of money and who are doing very well within that space. On the opposite side of that, you look at StarCraft, which hasn't done as well. So if you were pursuing StarCraft early on, a little bit harder to do. There's probably only a handful of talent, brilliant, amazing talent, who have been able to choose StarCraft as a career path and continue with that going forward. For me, I got into StarCraft a little late. I might be good at what I do, but I was probably always number 9, number 10, number 11 on the depth chart of talent who not only the audience wants to see, but who have a good relationship with developers, so on and so forth, to be picked up by all the titles. If you're going to try to be a commentator or a host in the space, you need to be selected for all the major competitions within that game to have a legitimate chance of sustaining yourself with the title, especially as a career. So for me, I was not really early enough in StarCraft to do it. So that's where I kind of been talking about, where I'm always looking for, okay, what games do I think are going to be big that I can align myself early so that I can be in the top 3 of that depth chart, so that I could have that legitimacy and so that I could have that security and, I guess, fame, celebrity status within that game, so that I can make a legitimate effort to have that as my only thing. But that being said, what I want to do, I want to work on all the games. I don't want to siphon myself and limit myself to one title, even though there are titles that I absolutely love. And this answer might be different for any other commentator in the space. Everyone's going to have something they want to do. I feel like my talent and my ability aligns the most, probably, with being the host. I want to be the bridge between the esports industry, space, fandom, and the rest of the world. Because we're in a time right now where esports is hugely popular, but only 5% or something, or even less maybe, know about it and are in tune with it. But that is constantly growing. So can I be the guy that can speak well with a decent vocabulary, look decent on camera, be excited and passionate and happy on camera? Can I be the guy who speaks to the parents, who speaks to the grandmother, who speaks to the masses in society who have no idea what's going on? But I feel like I can communicate that very nicely to people who are just tuning in, trying to figure it out. So with that in mind, I want to be the desk host for StarCraft, for Rocket League, for whatever game, for the Olympics, right? Wouldn't that be the dream at the end of the day? Like the Jim Nantz, Jim Nantz commentates the Masters, the World Series of Poker, probably not really, but he's commentating everything, and he's getting paid millions and millions of dollars to do it. So that's kind of where I'm trying to align myself. I think I have the ability to, and also I have the ability to, get that information. I'm a journalist guy. I read all the time. I love information. So I can take a game and I can grind it. I can learn it, and then I can be able to communicate that to others very quickly. I pride myself in that. So yeah, there might be a game that I love, like Rocket League or Kart Rider, where, look, I want to be involved with all of that. But at the end of the day, if there's a game coming out and they're looking for someone reputable, reliable, someone with a little bit of celebrity status who can come in, do a good job, no questions asked, that's me. And we have no idea what that game might be a year down the road, 2 years down the road. So if I can align myself to be there for that person, whoever it is, I think that's what I want to do.
Fantastic. Okay. Kind of related, but in a way, you see, I believe that we learn the most in our lives from our failures rather than our successes. Yeah. I think if you got a success the first time you tried something, you don't know what you did. Or you just did it and like, oh, okay. But if you failed, you know what you did wrong, and you could iterate until you get it right. So I'd like to ask, where do you consider you have fallen down? Otherwise, you'd be farther ahead. What have you failed at so others can avoid that mistake as well?
I'm probably mostly happy with everything that I've done. But that being said, there is a balance between, and this is so tricky. I mean, it's so tricky. There is a balance between and it's hard to know until you've seen it, between your personal channels and your personal brand, I guess, and kind of what I was talking about earlier, which is other people's brands and other people's initiatives and companies. I've spent a lot of myself trying to help and succeeding in helping a lot of other things, using me to help them or them or them or them, and doing well. And I'm happy about that. But at the end of the day, it's kind of a short-term benefit to yourself, because while you are going and helping this and that and this and that and this and that, and you're getting this paycheck here, paycheck there, paycheck here, paycheck there, it's not necessarily the ingrained income that you're really looking for, which others have focused on, their YouTube channel or their Twitch channel or their X channel, Y channel, Z channel, which is all out there. So if I had to go back really and really try to do it, it's impossible from where I was, just because of the infrastructure and what's in the space. It just hasn't been available, but now it is, where maybe I would focus more on my personal brand. And maybe I've been a little too unselfish, maybe I've been concerned a little bit more about others rather than myself.
Okay.
That it probably boils down to something like that. But overall, I'm pretty happy overall where I am. There are other things where, really pursuing things in the moment, some things pop up and then they go away. Opportunities. Can you be there to pursue it in the right space at the right time? That's tricky, but there are definitely shortcomings I've had in not pursuing something when I probably should have.
All right. Kind of a related question. What is something you're working to improve on in yourself today?
Honestly, the entrepreneurial side of things, I guess, and I think we're both doing that. It's just like trying to really understand and navigate the space so that we can benefit not only the space but also ourselves, so we can have security and career growth and be able to support a family, so on and so forth. So I would say I'm looking for more ownership opportunities, maybe looking to start more of my own things, my own projects, maybe start my own team. um, I've kind of mastered the on-camera. I can read a prompter. I can produce a show. I can do creative production. I can do live on-air commentary. I don't need a script. I can, there's a lot of boxes that I check. So from there, it's kind of just properly aligning myself with games that I think will succeed. Nurturing relationships that I have with developers so that they know that I can be there for them if they need me, and then focusing on my own initiatives. And look, I'm 30 years old, so there's a point where it's hard to get respect. It's hard, you want to be taken seriously, and you can't necessarily do that as a 20-year-old, which is why I'm kind of lucky, because I got into all this when I was in my teens. So it's like it wasn't a legitimate path. But now that I'm 30, maybe I'm getting a gray hair here or there, got a little facial hair going on. So maybe I can pursue some more serious things, and obviously learning more about the financial world and what goes into building a company, stocks, all that stuff. So I guess that would be what I'm working on now, is just finding more of those entrepreneuristic opportunities.
All right. I love it. Alex, this has been a fantastic interview. I really do I've enjoyed this one. I've been smiling the whole time. Um, how do people find you? How do they reach out to you? Where are you at on social media?
Yeah, so branding 101, don't pick a name that has numbers in it. Don't capitalize those letters. Don't do, those old Halo names, XX5 underscore Slayer. Something I'm fortunate about is my name is very simple. If you search my handle, you're gonna find me, because I picked a good name that no one else uses, doesn't have any crazy characters. So literally the answer is Google my handle, and everything will pop up that is related to me. Axeltoss. Axeltoss. That's my handle. No numbers, no capitalization. Very simple. It's my handle on YouTube, Twitch, LinkedIn, everything. Everything I have it. It's mine, and I'm proud of that. So, and quick story there. Axeltoss. I'm sure you could guess. Toss comes from Protoss. In StarCraft, one of the early games that I pursued. And then Axel, you could probably guess as well, is an anagram of my first name, Alex. I know, super big leaps and bounds, but Axeltoss, that's the name. Don't worry it out, but that's how you find me. Just Google it. Hopefully it doesn't sound cheap, but that's all you got to do.
Yeah, I
Nice.
love it. All
Nice.
right. Alex, as we wrap this up, do you have any final thoughts you want to share? Anything I didn't ask you think we still need to cover?
I would just say it's very exciting space. I'm very interested in what you're doing, and I'm going to be looking forward to seeing what you have coming up. I think right now we're in a time in esports where everyone's trying to find a position in the space, and it's a very exciting time. So I'm here alongside everyone else and trying to identify games that will succeed, that into the future, programs that will succeed, endemic sponsors that are going to get involved. That's only happening more and more. So I think we're at a time right now where we are really on the precipice of a lot of really cool things happening, and I'm just excited about it. And I guess something that would be open discussion for me is really an analysis of the space in that regard. What games will succeed? What companies are doing it right? What is the most potential going into the future? And to give some quick thoughts on that for fun, I really believe in games that tap into big demographics. I'm going to say some controversial stuff here for fun. League of Legends is a little too long and stale and boring, a little too much going on. There's a lot of first-person shooter games. A lot of shooter games aren't necessarily the ones that are going to really succeed. I mean, at the end of the day, there are guns and there's blood and there's terrorists and counter-terrorists. Fine, it can do well, but if we're talking really long term, maybe that's not as involved, and companies really have to navigate that. So I'm very interested in titles that are kid friendly but also competitive. Demographics, though, I believe the wider that demographic is skewed, even guys, girls from age 8 onward, that's probably what I'm most interested in. I can be the guy on camera who doesn't curse as much. You have a lot of commentators. I'll go and be all profane. It's like, that's not necessarily the direction I'm looking at. I want to be as friendly to as many people as possible. So that's really fun for me to just kind of analyze that and look for it. StarCraft, there's not a lot of violence. There's not any blood. Very kid friendly, very strategic, easy to get into, difficult to master. Rocket League, it's cars playing soccer. There's boost on the field, very kid friendly. Kids as young as 5 can play it. And it has huge potential for growth, high skill ceiling. It's very hard to get good at the game. That's on my list. Kart Rider. It's a very kid-friendly game. If you just look up the game, it's cartoony. It's a racing game. It's a little bit different than some of these other titles. I'm super interested in it. I think it has a ton of potential. It's also free to play on mobile, and it's going to be free to play on PC. Something else, that's interesting is the play to earn. You have pay to play, no one likes. You have free to play, better. We're starting to see some games that are paying players to play their game. We're seeing games that are so popular, making so much money. How do they keep their players? You got to pay your players. I know that sounds silly, but it's happening. Games are going to have to figure out how to pay their players to keep the huge masses of people playing. Fortnite's a good example. PUBG is a good example. Games that launched free to play, making staggering amounts of money by figuring out microtransactions. So I'm very interested in the economics in these games that really will help them succeed. Yeah.
All right. Alex Rodriguez, this is an absolutely wonderful interview. Thank you so much. I genuinely do appreciate you coming on today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right. And for everybody else, I'm going to remind you all, don't be just a gamer, be a gamerpreneur.